It's on.
All right, good, thank you. All right, so municipal and community outreach.
All
That
right,
would
so
be Mrs. Agerton.
we met this last month. We reviewed our goals for the upcoming year and discussed some possibilities of getting our website updated. So we've asked the borough office to help us set up a meeting with the folks that currently are running it to see if we're able to make some modifications or if we need to find a new platform. So I'm excited to be able to head in that direction and to be able to do that. We also discussed just making sure that we're looking at reallocating some staff to have a dedicated person to the social media. So that'll be something that we'll be working through with the borough office to see if we can have some consistency and for them not to have them stressing about all of the different platforms to be posting on. We also will be reviewing our social media policy so that we can present it to the council and make some recommendations coming up on that. So I think we definitely are going to make some progress, and we're going to keep meeting regularly to get our website and make sure that we are posting videos and making sure that all of the information is out there for our community members.
Very good. Any questions for Mrs. Agerton from the rest of council? Thank you very much. Next, we go to community and economic development. That would be Mr. Miller.
Sorry. Yes, we met on February 23rd, and we were the first meeting that night. Municipal and community outreach was the subsequent meeting, and we met for an hour and had a presentation by EPD, the firm that is reviewing and developing a revised version of our comprehensive plan. So we discussed the steps that are involved with that, and we tossed around some ideas as far as what we want to see in the revision of the comprehensive plan, and we discussed the next steps then in the process. And the next step will be for EPD, I think, to develop their initial report, and then we will start to phase in stakeholder meetings. So we have a lot to look forward to this year in regard to that. And the committee discussed its goals and decided that that was a pretty intensive goal and an intensive process. So we are going to make that our primary goal. And we also discussed some grant funding to help us along the process. There were 2 grants we spoke about that could be helpful. One with the county is a revolving grant of $50,000 that has an application process that is open throughout the year. So right now, I'm sure they have some funds, but we have to keep in mind moving towards the end of the year that it may be used up. So we have to figure out, where in the process we want to try to apply for that. And I think Roger, borough manager, he has expressed he's on top of that, and we'll meet with Mr. Stoner at the county to make that initial outreach there to see at what point in the process we can apply those funds to help us out with the planning process, because it can get pretty expensive. So that was the gist of the meeting. It was very productive, and then we moved on to municipal and community outreach, which was also a very productive meeting. So good all around.
Very good, thank you. Any questions for Mr. Miller or the committee? Hearing none, we'll move on to Finance Administration Ordinance. Mr. Anthony.
Good evening, all. We are planning on having a meeting on the 10th of this month. All are welcome. It's going to be via Zoom at 6:30, if I remember correctly. And I believe we have an agenda item to talk about the personnel policy. Anybody like to comment on what was sent out by the manager back on the 12th in response to our questions from the solicitor?
John,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
do you say there's a item in the agenda for personnel?
Not in the council agenda, Rod. It's on the agenda for this committee meeting now.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Hey, John, when again did you say this committee meeting's going to happen again?
The 10th.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, we'll be spending time, Scott, talking about our goals and what we've gotten done and what happens next at that meeting.
Okay, thanks.
Sure. All right. So is it the committee's desire then to move this forward to a council vote at the next council meeting?
I think so. My question was, I was just trying to sift through my email to find the revised copy, and it was revised with the definitions as provided with, from Mr. Cassidy and Mr. Miller.
Yes, that's correct.
Maybe we could ask the manager to send it out in full in the next packet so that we have it before the vote for everybody to take a final look at.
I will actually try to send it out before that, so you guys time to get through the whole thing. We took a 30-page document and it's now up to around 50 pages, 50 to 60 pages. So to give you guys time to digest it and go through everything, I'll send it out before that. So that way you have it.
Thank you.
Yep.
I believe the issues that were raised by council and the committee were addressed, as Mr. Miller just mentioned, in case you all were wondering what all was going on with that. I believe that they were addressed and seemed satisfactory to me, but we'll give everybody time to digest it again and then bring it
I
up.
remember seeing it, but if we could just have it, and I appreciate you sending it out in advance, Roger, but if we could just have it copied in the packets, that would be good, because sometimes top of mind is also.
Okay.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
We can do that.
Any questions for Mr. Anthony? Hearing none, I guess we will move on to Personnel Committee, Mr. Whitcomb and Mrs. Agerton.
We have nothing. I spoke with Sarah earlier. We have nothing specific to say at this time.
Okay. Any questions, comments? Hearing none, we'll move on. Property, Parks, and Recreation, Mrs. Agerton.
And we did not meet in February. I know that I was trying to set a date in March, and I looked through my notes. I don't think I did set it. Joe, Scott, did we set a date and I'm just missing it on my calendar? Or we did not?
No, I don't think so.
I don't think we did.
Okay, so maybe after this we can get together. I do think we're going to have a lot to discuss with the parks and the pool over the summer. So just want to get you guys in the loop with all of that stuff too. So just look at your calendars. Don't sneak off the meeting at the end. We'll get something set. I apologize for my neglect in getting a meeting.
Okay. Any questions for Mrs. Agerton? Hearing none, we'll move on to Public Works and Safety. Mr. Pellman.
Well, the Public Works and Safety Committee did meet in February, and as we narrowed the scope of the meeting to, in particular, the need for an additional truck and plow for the borough. And that's pretty much everything that was discussed at that meeting. And obviously it came up for a vote and action in the last council meeting, and we voted to get a truck. So we don't need to go into that, I don't think, anymore. We're nearing a point where the weather is going to start turning to get a little bit nicer, and we'll probably be working soon on the bicycle safety video that we were, especially Joe was, and Rodney and I were going to be working on. So that should be coming up soon. There was something that came up at the last council meeting, though, that eventually was going to cross the paths of our committee. And that was the discussion over the letter we received from Mr. Hunking on Schoolside Drive about installing speed bumps on Schoolside Drive. And I think at the last meeting, it was something for the borough manager and the chief to think about, and at some point come before our committee. I don't know if we want to discuss it here at this committee workshop or not, the feasibility of something like that, but it's open for discussion now with the entire council here if we'd like to. Roger, the putting the asphalt bumps and signs according it would be rather expensive, wouldn't it?
It would be expensive in actually more ways than one. It would negate that road. If we put speed bumps in, we'd negate the fact that we're going to collect liquid fuel money for that road. They would take it completely out of the picture. The pillows that Solicitor Cassidy spoke about, speaking of which, he's having IT issues. He'll be on as soon as he can get connected. The pillows that he talked about would be optional, or would be an option. However, you're only putting them out during the summer when school's not in session. You don't put them out during the winter because they get, like our pedestrian crossing signs, they get hit with a snowplow and everything else. I think with the school over there, and the letter even states in there, the traffic study they did showed that the traffic's like 23.9 miles an hour and it's posted at 25. So the speeding's not necessarily an issue. I think what the problem is the volume of school, when school's in session. Part of the plan that was approved should negate some of that, because it's going to segregate the bus drop off and the parent drop off. So I think there's some things to work out there, and the school district's well aware of some of the logistic issues we're seeing on the streets with buses and cars and stuff like that. I think they did a really good job at the kindergarten academy. There's still a little bit of work in progress at Elmwood. And I think once we see these projects done, Broad Street, the high school, and Northside, I think we're going to see a little bit different traffic flow around there. So I think that's going to go a long way to help it. But there's a lot of volume whenever school is in session over there on Schoolside Drive. So I know Mr. Freeland's on here tonight, so if he wants to chime in on traffic around the schools, he can do that. But I know he's here for a different reason. But I think that's going to go a long ways to alleviating some of this problem. It's just we're going to have to wait a little bit and see what's going on with it. Right now, there's no real justification for putting speed bumps on that road.
I have people sitting back there when they're available to watch the stop signs, because I think part of the problem is the perception of speed is not stopping at the stop signs. So my guys are going to be back there when they can be. I did that after the last meeting.
Roger, did you say that the gentleman that made this complaint was going to be joining us on the Zoom meeting tonight?
No, she did not state that she was going to be on. She was looking for a reply back, and quite frank with you, I haven't got back to her yet, because I think Chief and I need to formulate a letter to reply to her, even though it was not addressed to us, it was addressed to council itself.
Okay, and when you say she, this is that, I see the letter signed by Eugene Hunting. Is that?
Was it Eugene?
Yeah.
Okay, then my mistake. Yeah. I thought it was Helen. I know a Helen Hunking lives back in that area, and that might be the wife.
Okay.
But I know EMC Wardle spoke about the stop signs too, so.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think, it would be premature to do the drastic measures that he was looking at anyway, until we see if maybe some of the problem can be handled by, less expensive measures. And how much money would be taken from liquid fuels for a single roadway like that? Do you have any clue?
Oh, I'd have to see what the breakdown is on it. And that's going to vary based on population and quite frankly, fuel tax.
That was just curiosity. And that's all I have. I mean, if anybody else, I can tell everybody that my beloved cemetery will be dug up starting probably on Thursday with the sewer line that they're putting in from York Street down all the way to Frederick Street across the middle of it, or the lower half of the cemetery there. So that should be interesting.
Don't worry about that phone ringing.
Okay.
God.
Well, we
Hang
don't
up,
have to
Paul.
ask who that was.
Hang up, Paul. Good God.
We're talking about your extended warranty on your vehicle.
Yeah, right.
Do we have any further questions for Mr. Palman and the Public Works and Safety Committee? All right, hearing none, we will adjourn the committee portion of our workshop meeting for this evening. The hour of 7:30. I will call this council meeting of the Borough of Mechanicsburg for March 2nd, 2021 to order. Before we begin the meeting, I want to announce that we had an executive session at our last meeting with no action to be taken. And this evening we will be having an executive session following this meeting with possible action. So we will begin by the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by a moment of silence. If you would all just mute your screen for just a moment so that we don't have all the voices at once, and I'll kind of lead. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Moment of silence, please. Thank you. You can unmute your microphones now. All right, roll call. Mrs. Martin.
President Weber.
Here.
Vice President Miller.
Here.
Councilwoman Egerton.
Present.
Councilman Anthony.
Here.
Councilman Booker.
Here.
Councilman Pellman.
Here.
Councilman Whitcomb.
Last time I checked, I'm here.
Mayor Ritter.
Here.
Solicitor Cassidy. He's still having trouble.
He's still not out here yet.
Okay. Engineer Rogalski. He's not here, is he?
No, he's not.
Chief Myers.
Here.
Chief Neff is not here. And Manager Szarski.
Here.
Oh, EMC Wardle. You're here. And Assistant Manager Boyer.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. Are there any guests this evening?
No, sir.
No guests. Okay. This is the first portion of the meeting where citizens may make comments or requests. Do we have any citizens' comments or requests? For those of you who are joining who are not council people, if you use your reaction button on your Zoom meeting and raise your hand or clap your hands or something to let us know, because we can't always tell when people are making requests. But I'm not seeing or hearing any, so we will move on to correspondence.
I have no correspondence at this time, sir.
Okay. We need to now approve the minutes from the regular meeting of council of February 16, 2021. Do I hear a motion?
I'll make that motion.
All right. I didn't hear who was first, but I believe it was Mr. Whitcomb. And I believe that was Mr. Pellman that seconded. Am I correct?
That is correct.
Thank you. Is there any discussion, additions, or corrections to the minutes as presented? Hearing none, Mrs. Martin?
Unless I hear a negative response, I will record the vote as unanimous.
And the minutes of the meeting of February 16th are approved. Not seeing the engineer here, we'll skip his report for now. And we'll move on to community liaison reports. Downtown Partnership, Mrs. Agerton.
Yep, we continue to meet the second Monday of every month via Zoom. The partnership is full planning for some events coming up. You'll see one that is on our agenda this evening for the wine walk, and then also partnering with Community Day in the fall. So I'm just really trying to draw people to the downtown, getting creative and looking at how we can do COVID-friendly events to safely get people to frequent our businesses and raise a little funds for the downtown partnership. That is my report.
Thank you very much. Any questions or comments for Mrs. Agerton? Hearing none, we'll move on to the library report. Mr. Pellman.
Okay. The library currently is having Diener's Dine Out for every Wednesday in the month of March. That would be the 3rd, the 10th, the 17th, the 24th, and the 31st from 7 a.m. to 1 p.m. And as usual, a percentage of the cost of your meal goes to the Friends of the Mechanicsburg Library, and that would be 20% in this situation. So if you are accustomed to eating breakfast out, we'd love to have you go to Diener's and spend lots of money to help the library. The T-shirts that I think I had mentioned at the last meeting are still on sale. These are T-shirts that are going to help try to make the library money. They have printing on the front and printing on the back. They have all sizes, and the costs vary from depending on which size you get. And they are for sale at the desk, or you can purchase the T-shirts online. The library also has federal tax forms, being the season that a lot of us are getting into doing our taxes. They have federal 1040 and 1045. Well, is that right? 1045R, SR, 1040 SR forms, whatever they are. I'm not exactly sure. But the library has those federal forms if you want to do your taxes. And that's it for this month.
All right. Scott, for the dining at Diener's, is there a form online that needs to be downloaded?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yep, there's a form that you can download on your computer, or you can pick one up at the library in person. And you must have this form in order to get the library the benefit of the 20% of your meal. And they do not recommend or allow you to pass them out as people come in at the door. You have to have one in your possession when you go.
Very good. Any questions for Mr. Pellman? Hearing none, we'll move on to the Museum Association report. Just a couple of items. The the freight station exhibit that was set up for Christmas, which those of you who have frequented that at Christmas time in the past know it's the train setup. It's remaining open on a limited basis till further notice. It may actually end up staying up all year because of COVID. Everybody likes trains, and we can certainly social distance in there by only allowing a few people at a time in. If you've ever seen the train layout, it's pretty hard to mingle with people in there when you're doing that. So that's going to remain open until further notice. because of the pandemic, but we wanted to do something to keep things going. Also, we're going to be having some cooking events when COVID settles down a little and the weather changes where we can work outside. Some of you may know Charlie Gipe. Charlie is a longtime resident of the Mechanicsburg area. Charlie was very active in the fire company in Hampton Township, I believe, years ago. But he was a chef at Hershey for the Hershey Entertainment Company, and he loves to do outdoor cooking classes. And so keep your eyes and ears open for some announcements in the very near future. And we'll be able to use our new little building for cleanup for those things. So we're excited about that. So that's all the news I have right now for the Museum Association. All right. Downtown Program Service Manager, Rebecca Urick.
Good evening, everyone. A couple weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, a truck again hit the corner of Mark Walker's property at the corner of Walnut and East Main Street. And I immediately talked with him and reminded him, he didn't need any reminders, but how often that corner has been hit, the overhang has been hit. And he's agreeable to a project. So we will likely commit about base funds, but also the larger Cumberland Street View grant to that project to remove the overhang. That would be one of the things that we would insist on. Likely to replace the first floor siding, which is the opposite direction of the upper floor siding, add an eyebrow to delineate the two, and do some other work. I'm not sure what all he might be wanting to do there or willing to invest, but he's a very good partner, and he's away for most of the month of March. We will convene in April. So it's going to stay pretty much like it is for a little while here as we get to work on that and come to an agreement on what all will be done and what grants can be provided. But that's very good news to spruce that up. He referred to that building as the ugliest building in town. And I told him I didn't think that was accurate, but it is on the radar and we do want to improve it. So I'm glad he's willing to do that. We have a very unique borough property that will be for sale. I am working with that owner who wishes to remain anonymous for a few weeks here. We've approached several potential buyers for that property. We want to make sure that it goes to very trusted hands. So watch for that. We have a downtown retailer who will be relocating within the downtown to a little bit larger space. So that will free that up. We have the space where Larson Mead Works was located. We've shown that to a few people. There's a little bit of interest in that. And the Cumberland County Redevelopment Authority is looking for a big project, a project that would involve commercial units as well as residential units. We always like to see at least 8 residential units. A little bit more is better. We like to see them in a downtown or a town center so that residents and those who are working in the commercial unit or units have places to go and visit and can do some of that, by foot. So if you have some ideas, I do, but if you have any ideas, please let me know. Doesn't have to be residential now, can be an odd building, can be a building that's never been used for residential or commercial, just needs to be available or could be available within the next several years here. Cumberland County will be announcing its next round of COVID assistance for businesses. These will be in the form of grants up to $50,000, 300 employees or less. This is the hospitality industry, which is food and beverage, lodging, that sort of thing, and the businesses that help provide for those types of businesses. You have to have at least a 50% decline in your revenues, your sales, for the period April through December 2020. And watch for that. We've been teasing it, but we don't have the official applications and criteria in place, but we'll be announcing that within the next 10 to 14 days. That's what I have. Anything for me? Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your report.
Thank you.
Are there any additions to the agenda?
Yes, sir. You alluded to it a little while ago. We would have an executive session on a matter of personnel with action.
Okay. Approval of the agenda. Do I
I'll
have
make
a
that motion.
to approve the agenda as stated? Was that you, Mr. Pellman?
No, that was me.
Oh, sorry, Rodney. Okay. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. Okay, it's been properly moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, Mrs. Martin,
Unless I hear a negative response, I will record the vote as unanimous.
and the agenda is approved. Action items before Borough Council, Mr. Szewski.
The action items before Borough Council on March 2nd of 2021. Discussion and action to adopt Resolution 3, 2021. It's the Comcast Franchise Agreement Approval Resolution.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved by Mr. Anthony, seconded by Mr. Miller. Is there any discussion? I believe the solicitor has reviewed all this and everything is in order. So unless do I hear any
The
comment?
solicitor's on now.
I am.
Oh, there he is.
Yep. I have reviewed the agreement and reviewed it with Cohen Law Group, and everything appears to be in order, and I recommend approval.
Very good. Any other discussion? Hearing none, Mrs. Martin?
Unless I hear a negative response, I will record the vote as unanimous.
Thank you, and the motion carries. Realizing we are in the agenda portion of the meeting, I see Mr. Rogalski is with us now. Do you have an engineer's report, sir?
Actually, Mr. Weber, I do have nothing to add at this time.
All right, very good. I thought we'd give you the opportunity.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, next item, Mr. Szewski.
Discussion and action to approve the special events application for Jubilee Day.
So moved.
Okay, it's been moved. Do we have a second?
Second.
Was that Mr. Pellman? All
It
right, we have
was.
thank you very much. We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? I know we have, excuse me just a minute. We have, let's see, Jeff Palm is here, and I believe Jeremy Freeland is here. They're from the chamber. So if you have any questions you want to ask those people, please feel free to do that.
I have some questions. I know at the last meeting we had discussed what the COVID plan would be for Jubilee Day, knowing that we have a huge amount of people congregating. Do you guys have a safety plan, or what's the CDC recommendations for street gatherings at this time?
At this point, we're still putting stuff together on that, but as we have in the past, I think a lot of it would go with what Roger, Nate, and Chief would put in, because they are they're the experts on safety as part of that, and we would probably defer to a lot of their recommendation on it. I have a feeling that no matter if we are able to have something, whatever it will be, it will not look as we have had in the past dozen years or better. Part of it is some people will not want to participate, and then the other part about it is just financial at this point also. Jeremy, do you have anything to toss in there?
No, I would agree that we would defer to any guidance that we'd receive from Roger and Chief and Nate specific to that. It's largely going to depend upon what our governmental position is specific to what events can happen and what mitigation efforts are necessary at those events. So it's really a wait and see game at this point.
Have you guys thought about any modifications to Jubilee Day? Because I'm a believer that we need to have something to look forward to. But just thinking like how we can restructure what used to be to the new normal. Is there any thought to maybe modifying it in some capacity?
Again, it's really going to be based upon what it is we're able to do and what we're able to, the auspices under which we're able to function based upon the efforts and the mitigation requirements that the state puts forward. The other piece too is largely contingent upon whether we'll actually get a permit. So for the highway. So I mean, I don't know where that process is at this very moment, but that's going to really determine whether we can have it all together. So we just need to make sure that whatever guidance we receive is something that we follow and that we adjust accordingly.
So Nate, do you have any insight? I know that things have changed. I saw that there was new guidelines that were released, opening up some things. Is there any guidance to summer gatherings or street fairs?
Not specifically. Most recent guidance increases outdoor events to 20%. So that would mean that it would, I guess my concern is how do you enforce that when it's on a borough street with unlimited access points? And I think it was you, Councilperson Egerton, who brought up at the last meeting about potentially having it at the park or another location where there would be fewer access points. I think that there is certainly the potential that there may be even more opening up as we move forward, especially if numbers continue to stay low and vaccinations continue to go well. But I don't know how soon that will be and where that will be coinciding with the permitting process and the steps that need to be taken by the chamber.
So when they say 20%, what is the average attendance on a good year at Jubilee Day? That's probably a loaded question. When it's not raining.
Yeah, that there isn't a hard number. Okay. Because there's no ticketing. So I lose count after 20 because I run out of fingers and toes and that type of thing. Now, of course, we've thrown around numbers numerous times, but there's nothing major. I mean, before I even got here, I think a number had been tossed out that was 60,000. And that may have been done by some kind of equation and sky photo and how many people can fit in each space and things of that nature. I mean, we like I said, we can throw out 60 or 70,000, but many times we can also say that actually it was probably only about 35,000 throughout the day or 45,000 or things like that. The only way I can usually tell if there's more people or not is by the amount of trash that has been generated.
I will say one thing from my past experience with Jubilee Day. There's no way you can control the traffic in and out on Main Street. And it is so full that you can't move half the time.
Chief Myers has something she wants to add.
Yeah, I might have trouble getting outside agency assistance. That's one of the things that I'm concerned about. And even if the numbers are lower, and again, we cannot control how many people show up. People, you can enter from somebody's backyard. So we can't really control that. And I believe that that in and of itself might prevent some of the outside agencies that help us every year from giving us some manpower. So that's got to be kept in mind, as well as some of the other things that have already been mentioned.
Yeah, I just have a hard time envisioning like how we would social distance, even if the numbers continue to go down. I'm sure there's going to be still some guidance. I just, in my head, would like to see what we could do differently to have some kind of celebration, but maybe not in the same way, because I know it's true to every Mechanicsburg person's heart to participate in Jubilee Day. But for safety reasons, I can't foresee a scenario where we will hit all the marks, even if we have 20% of 35,000 people. How do we social distance?
That's a low figure, Sarah.
Yeah, that's my concern is, food trucks, they have the lines, the tapes, they can keep people out. But I've been to Jubilee Day. I know, that you touch everyone that you see.
I'm sorry, Chief or Nate, do you know if PennDOT is issuing any permits or anything like that. I mean, this could be as simple as we submit the permit and it's taken out of our hands again.
Well,
Kind of like last year.
I can say that they issued the permit for the wrench drop. So that's my last experience with it. Can't say that we've tried for anything since then, but because Earth Day went virtual, I think again this year, but they're not having Earth Day, the traditional Earth Day, which would have been our first one we would have asked for permits for. But and the wrench drop got a permit, but decided not to go forward. So that's all I can tell you is that we already got permission for one at the end of last year.
Chief, wasn't that just for a certain area?
Well, no, that would, yeah, that's just a small section of street, but that was a change from what we couldn't get any permits up to that point. But I was kind of surprised they got back to us right away and issued a permit. So.
Well, I know Jubilee Day, though, they would be required to issue a permit from Walnut Street to York Street.
Yeah, I'm not sure that the area is the problem. I talked to a guy at PennDOT District 8 that said that it's all depending on what the governor is saying at the time. So they don't know how many people come to each event that they issue a permit for, but they do get us to sign that we'll obey all the rules and regulations. So the mayor gets to sign that.
Yeah. Didn't I hear on the news that they're projecting that most people will be vaccinated by the end of May? Is there truth to that, or?
That was on TV, yeah.
Yeah, I heard that too.
There's going to be enough
but
vaccine.
that doesn't mean everybody's going to be vaccinated when they get down to Jubilee Day.
There's going to be enough vaccine produced by the end of May, but that doesn't mean that it will be in arms, and it also doesn't mean that people who are getting a dose vaccine are going to have both doses by that point.
It appears to me that the motion that we have is to approve the application. I think we might want to consider saying something. I don't know, John, if you would want to change your motion to make it based upon the ability to get permits and or necessary police help. I mean, there are a lot of, I think we have to give them the ability to plan. If we say no, they can't plan. If we say yes, they can plan, and if it falls through, it falls through. I think that the gist of the motion should be to give them the opportunity to plan contingent upon all of those things that have been discussed already.
I have 2 points for consideration. One, I would just want to agree with Councilman Agerton and what she said and her concerns. I share the same concerns. And I want to point out that there is another application for an event on our agenda tonight that has a ticket. It is a ticketed event. So I think in terms of, our precedent and what we're setting, in terms of, what kind of applications we're approving and which ones we're providing conditions on, we should be careful with that. And I would just maybe ask for the solicitor's input as to what conditions we could place on the application. Could we make it contingent on the approval of borough manager and the emergency management coordinator, with a number of conditions like President Weber stated, permits, some sort of crowd control mechanisms, things like that.
To answer Mr. Miller's question, the short answer is yes. The council can approve this application request subject to conditions, and those conditions could be whatever council deems appropriate. From a flexibility standpoint, it would be probably most convenient to approve the application request, subject to final approval of the borough manager in consultation with council leadership with respect to COVID-19 safety parameters. And that's the starting point. I will say, while we were sitting here having this conversation, I was just taking a quick look at the updated guidance from the Commonwealth on COVID-19 restrictions for outdoor gatherings. And the restrictions are based upon, or premised, I should say, on outdoor gatherings at venues. And this is a unique situation that Jubilee Day is not at a venue, as we've discussed. It's at an outdoor event. There's no way to control points of entry into the event. So I, as a practical matter, I suspect that the real issue is going to run through PennDOT in terms of what restrictions, if any, PennDOT is going to place on this event. So I just throw that out there for discussion purposes, that whatever action council takes tonight, assuming that council greenlights this event, even with conditions, I suspect that we'll probably learn a lot more about what may be required in terms of restricting numbers when it comes to submitting this application to PennDOT for approval.
And I would say that I feel like if we greenlight this, that I think those conditions need to come back, and we need to talk about what we're going to do to meet those requirements. I feel the whole getting to planning an event, but I also think that, you know, from a practicality standpoint, planning events, all that time going into something that may not come to fruition. I know people do not want to invest that for something that is not going to happen if there's too many parameters. I think that there's a lot to be said that we need answered, and make sure that it's a safe event, and how we're going to be responsible and set an example to our community members about, you know, social distancing and following the guidelines set forth by our governor and the CDC. I have, you know, in the form and fashion that Jubilee Day is, I have a lot of hesitance that we'll be able to meet all of those requirements. I would be interested to see what the permitting is like, but I definitely do not believe that everyone is going to be vaccinated by May. Just knowing all of the complaints of people trying to get vaccinated right now in the 1A category, I would agree with EMC Wardle that the vaccine will be here, but that doesn't mean it'll necessarily be there in the arms of our neighbors. I just have a lot of hesitance to have an event where people are that close, knowing, we all know how crowded it gets, knowing that we will be responsible
Sarah.
for fashion.
Sarah.
Yes.
There'll be no such thing as social distancing in Jubilee Day.
Yep.
Mr. President,
they won't believe in that.
Okay, point of order. John, go ahead.
So I'd like to modify my motion. I believe that, you know that I've been deeply involved in Jubilee Day in the past. I believe that it's a Mechanicsburg icon, but we need to be safe about it. So if I modify my motion to say something to the effect of, subject to the development of a safety plan that is approved by this council at a later date by the chamber. That way we can give them approval subject to a plan that they can work out with Mr. Wardle and the chief and the other chief, and it'll be contingent upon them getting the approvals they need from PennDOT. But it gives them the ability to move forward at least, but it's still subject to a safety plan that we have to sign off on a month from now, or whatever it is that they can get it to us, tied to whatever's going on in May.
That sounds great to me. Scott, I believe you seconded that, didn't you?
No, that was not me.
Who seconded?
Oh no, yes, I did.
Yes.
Okay, so John, your modified motion is
approval.
You want to give it to us again for the benefit of Sarah?
Approval of their application subject to the development and approval of a safety plan developed by them, given to us at a later date.
And I second that with what John just said.
All right, so it's been properly moved and seconded. Is there any other discussion?
And that, just for clarification, that is contingent on the subsequent approval of council. That safety plan?
Yes, that's my route. I did it that way because I don't think it's fair to lay that on Mr. Wardle and the chief. I think the council needs to be responsible for this approval ultimately.
No, I understand.
Well, the only other discussion would be is if we can't get security for that, this all becomes a moot point. If
Well,
chief
that-
can't get other people to come in,
Right under my motion.
yeah.
That would be part of the safety plan, wouldn't it? Yeah. So I think that's included there. Wording may be a little broad, but I believe that's the understanding I have anyway. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, Mrs. Martin?
Unless I hear a negative response, I'll record the vote as unanimous.
That would be a negative on my part.
Okay.
Okay, we have one no vote. Okay, the motion carries. Thank you all for your discussion on that and your willingness to try to come up with a plan. I think that's the key. Very good. Well done. All right, next item, Mr. Szewski.
Discussion and action to award the replacement of the federal panel box project at the highway department. Those were attachments 3, 4, and 5 in there.
Do I hear a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Mr. Pellman.
I'll
Is there a
second that.
Mr. Whitcomb,
Second.
second. Any discussion?
Roger, did you, after reviewing the quotes, in your opinion, was the scope of the work, the way they solved the issue that was happening, the same for everyone, or was there are different resolutions to the same problem?
They use their own terminology,
Okay.
Mr. Booker. I had that discussion with CH when he sent the quotes down to me. They use their own terminology, and you see the one has an alternate bid in there.
Mm-hmm.
He's actually the one that saw that, and then the other two revised their bids, but they included it all in there. The Zimmerman quote includes everything. The other two changed things a little bit in the way they worded it on their quotes.
Just point of order, Mr. President. I think we need to include the awardee in the motion.
Yes, I think that's correct.
Can you say that again?
The motion should be action to award replacement of the federal panel box project at the highway department by Zimmerman Plumbing and Heating.
In the amount of.
In the amount of. It's on the attachment.
I'm pulling it up here right now.
Or you can just say as per the attachment, if you want to word the motion that way.
Unless there's an alternate in there.
There is not an alternate in there, sir. On that
Okay,
bid.
so Scott, you'd have to redo your motion to have that included.
It's
Okay,
4,020 in case you wanted to be specific.
Yes, I will make my motion for the bid by Zimmerman's for 4,000. Do I need to include anything else besides that?
And so it'll read as the motion already reads, the highway department for Zimmerman Plumbing and Heating for the amount of $4,020. Am I correct?
Okay.
That's the way it should read. You okay with that?
Yes, I'll make a motion for that.
And I think, who made the second?
I'll second that.
Okay. It's been properly moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, Mrs. Martin?
Unless I hear a negative response, I'll record the vote as unanimous.
And hearing none, the motion carries.
Discussion and action to approve the special events application for the Art and Wine Walk, attachment number 6.
Do I hear a motion?
I'll make the motion for approval of the special event application for the Art and Wine Walk.
I'll
Okay.
second
I'll
that.
second.
I saw Mr. Booker's mouth moving and I can't see Mr. Whitcomb, so we're going to give that one to Mr. Booker for the second. And is there any further discussion?
Just a note that the application did include COVID-19 precautions, and they are doing it differently this year as a ticketed event, and they're limiting the amount of people that gather in the businesses. So.
Very good. Any other discussion? Go ahead, Mrs. Martin.
Unless I hear a negative response, I'll record the vote as unanimous.
And the motion carries. Next item, please.
Discussion and action to grant permanent status to Patrol Officer Tyler Wrights beginning March 3rd, 2021.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Mr.
I'll
Booker.
second that.
And thank you, Mr. Whitcomb. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, Mrs. Martin?
Unless I hear a negative response, I'll record the vote as unanimous.
And the motion carries. Congratulations, Officer Wrights. Next item.
Discussion and action on the land development waivers requested by ELA for the Mechanicsburg area senior high school renovation and additions plan as follows. Storm, if you want to do these all at once, or if there's any questions on them, we can separate them out at that time. Stormwater basin bottoms shall have a minimum slope of 2% with paved slow flow channels. Stormwater ordinance 26-125.5E. Stormwater basin outlet piping and cutoff collars shall be reinforced concrete. Stormwater ordinance 26-125.7F. Existing conditions for stormwater management calculations shall classify existing impervious as meadow. Stormwater ordinance 26-123A2B. Provide required shade trees along public streets. Ordinance chapter 22-604F3. Provide information on the landscape plan demonstrating that 5% of the total tract area is planted in shrubbery and there are enough trees to meet the required one tree for each 3,000 square feet of total tract area. That is chapter 22-604F4B and C.
There you have it. Greg, do you have anything to add to that for us?
I do. So of the 5 waivers granted, the first 2 related to the stormwater basin bottoms and outlet piping reflect the fact that our stormwater management ordinance has some age to it. There's a little bit different approach to some of these designs these days. And those are older provisions, which we would wholeheartedly support a waiver of currently because we just do things differently nowadays. So just for council's edification, we will be updating our stormwater management ordinance next year. So. And then with respect to the landscaping items, the shade trees along public streets, obviously people are familiar probably with the site. There's a number of existing trees out there that serve that same purpose. And then also the landscape plan demonstration of the total coverage. That's a waiver we grant very, very often in the borough just because that particular provision is really designed for smaller sites. Whereas on a site like this, that is a gigantic amount of landscaping. So we believe that they've provided a suitable amount and consistent with what they've done on other projects with respect to schools throughout the borough. The last one is this existing conditions for stormwater management shall classify existing impervious as meadow. Once again, this is kind of a legacy condition with the school property. They would have to take into account all the existing runoff that comes from the school, and everybody's aware that there is an issue related to that. On Broad Street, that they'd have to take it back to Meadow, and that would be an incredible lift for them to do given the school existed prior to the enactment of the ordinance. However, as a condition of that, and we've had some discussions with the school as well as their design engineer for quite some time now, they have included a large portion of what was most recently installed back in I think the late 90s, early 2000s that had been previously waived as part of this process. So they are doing what we had requested them to do with respect to stormwater, provide direct control of that stormwater on the site, as well as changing the discharge point of it, which we can talk a little bit more perhaps, when the plan comes around as well. So, but that's specific to the waivers. Those are just the comments that I'd like the council to be aware of, and we would support granting those waivers, and the planning commission recommended granting those waivers as well.
Thank you, Greg. Appreciate that. Any questions for the engineer or I think I see Todd Smith is here.
Yes.
Any questions for him?
So my question is, they are providing landscaping and trees, especially additional trees, planting new trees, and because one interesting thing I've learned is on the municipal authority and stormwater is trees help with that, with mitigating stormwater. So
Correct, Mr. Miller. It's not just, it's the number of trees really is what the waiver is for. They are providing a number of trees in a buffer area as well as some other areas, but really the waiver is specific to the quantity, the total quantity of trees.
how about for the access road along coming from Long Meadow? Are they providing any buffer there for the neighbors and that will?
Correct. That is where the bulk of the proposed landscaping actually occurs, both in that area as well as the area along South George Street, where like the loading dock kind of area exists currently.
Okay.
This is probably an unrelated question, but I walk that area fairly often. And when you come down Long Meadow Street, the sidewalk and curb ends at the school property. And I didn't really see in the plan closely, maybe Todd can help me with this. Is there a plan, since you now are going to bring buses in at that area, that there would be sidewalk and curb in there that goes up to, I think it's Orchard Street. Is that what it is? Any thoughts on that, or?
Yeah, I mean, we can touch on that when we review the plan if you like, but there is no plan or nothing on the plan to add sidewalks to Orchard Street. The Orchard Street connection is a bus connection. It's not meant to be a pedestrian connection or a passenger vehicle connection.
Yeah.
Posting it with a sign that it is school property, it's authorized use only, and the Orchard Street connection will remain as it is. We're not anticipating any additional sidewalk down Orchard Street as well.
No, I probably misspoke. I'm talking about Long Meadow Street.
Right.
Long Meadow Street, there is some sidewalk there, but it stops.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where I'm concerned, because if we're going to have kids walking to school from that development, it seems to me they ought to have sidewalks.
And the interesting thing is the opposite side of Long Meadow is a different school district.
That's correct.
Yeah.
That's correct.
So
I'm not worried about that side of the street.
But no, we presume there's going to be very limited pedestrians from Long Meadow. And so
it's just a question for my own sake. I didn't mean to take everyone's time with that, but. All right, is there any other discussion on the motion as it appears? I think Mr. Cizerksi hit all the points. Hearing none, we have a motion and a second, I believe. So Mrs. Martin, it's up to you.
Unless I hear a negative response, I'll record the vote as unanimous.
Hearing none, the motion carries. Next item.
Discussion and action on the conditional approval of the preliminary final land development plan for the Mechanicsburg area senior high school renovation and additions, addressing the comments from the Pannoni memo dated 2/19/2021, and that's attachments 7 and 8 in your packet.
Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Anthony. A second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Mrs. Agerton. Is there any discussion? Greg, do you want to weigh in here again, please?
Certainly, Mr. Chairman. So the the plan proposes essentially 2 additions to the existing school building. One's a 2-story classroom addition, kind of in the back of the building, as well as a more administrative functioning addition to the front. This plan's been through a number of different iterations, even prior to hitting the Planning Commission. We had several meetings with the school district related to mainly stormwater was really our focus, and also internal traffic circulation. So there was a strong desire to separate pedestrian traffic from the student parking lot, as well as the bus traffic, which is how they kind of got pulled apart currently. And then also try to manage in a better manner parent pickup, which has been accomplished in the front of the building as opposed to rear. So there's 3 distinct kind of transportation pods. There's a bus area, there's a student driver area, and there's a parent area, which is good. So, but with respect to the stormwater, as everybody's aware, that entire site drains to Broad Street, and when there's an existing rain event, it basically overtakes the infiltration facility, we'll call it, on Broad Street, and tends to then flow down Broad Street. So they have provided an alternate piped discharge point that is going to run down behind the existing elementary school and actually discharge directly onto Keller. With the ultimate goal or discussion that an authority project in the future would be to continue that piping further down towards an actual discharge point at Simpson Street. So we believe that it's the best available solution with respect to the stormwater issue we have there currently. Obviously, we've been talking about the broad Keller George kind of corridor for a long time, both at the authority level as well as at the borough council level. I kind of just continue on. This is kind of like, step number 2. Step 1 was the construction of the basin at the elementary school. That would be part of a future plan. Step 2 would be this. And then, of course, as we move forward, when funding would become available, we'd look at tying it all together. So.
Thank you. Is there any other discussion?
I'd like to follow up on your sidewalk comment, President Weber. I was looking at the aerial for Longmeadow Street, and I guess that is a different town. That is a different township where it curves and goes out to Genevieve.
Yeah, the west side of Longmeadow is Cumberland Valley School District.
That's right. It does look like they were required to put sidewalks in that new development there.
Well, they end.
They end right there at the school district property.
Yeah.
So I don't know, Greg, from a community planning perspective, is it worth requiring the installation of the sidewalk?
I look at it this way, what are the kids going to do when they get to the end of where the sidewalk ends? It's not going to be a situation they either have an option to kind of walk down the street and then continue to walk down the bus route. But I think we all know they're not going to do that. They're going to hang a hard right and walk right through in between the track and the proposed grass field. So they're off the vehicular travel way. I think that's really a school issue to manage, not necessarily, kind of an edge of the road kind of thing. And there is a weird, that the road is Mechanicsburg, and then it transitions to fully Mechanicsburg, then to Upper Allen in that area, and then the other side of the street's Monroe. There's a lot of lines kind of coming together right there at that particular point.
Right. It'd be interesting to know, though. I guess it is part of the ordinance in the township there to have the sidewalks installed for some purpose.
Well, actually, that curve is the borough's. Believe it or not. I don't think we actually maintain it, but there was about I don't know, maybe 75-foot piece of that ended up being in the borough, and we did bond that back in the day when that subdivision was built, and so that is actually our requirement as well when you build a public street, to provide the sidewalk. So,
right. So that would be my concern, is that we provide the sidewalk as a community planning and connectivity issue, because we have required that of other property owners. I understand the cost involved with that, but that's just my thought from a community planning perspective and connectivity and fairness, that we've required other property owners to comply with that.
One thing I might mention, that area between the soccer field and the track is also a stormwater feature. And there would be an opportunity to, if you were to, instead of a true sidewalk, concrete sidewalk next to the road, but extend like a bituminous path just to the south side of I don't know if that's really south or not, to the south side of the soccer field. I think that would also do double duty for, being able to access the soccer field, and then that could tie into the existing path that kind of runs behind the proposed addition. So
that would address my concern for some pedestrian safety in that area, and just connecting the sidewalk to something that's for people to, seems like President Weber walks in that area, so maybe it'd be safer for him. But
And I don't want it done for me, but I'll tell you, it is strange when you go up along Meadow Street through the development out there through Trindle Station, and then you come out on along Meadow Street behind the school and there's no sidewalk.
no,
You
it's
have to
true.
walk out in the street and you got to go up the hill and you got to walk through a huge water problem at the top of that intersection there, at the top of the hill, where you would turn and go back toward the high school. So I'm just thinking we should be looking at mitigating some of that as well while we're at it.
And part of that challenge is that we do have 3 municipalities coming together right there. We're leaving Trindle Station from Upper Allen Township, where their roads were built to a whole different standard than what you have in the Long Meadow section in Mechanicsburg Borough next to Monroe Township. When Trindle Station was built, there were requirements for 50-foot right-of-way and sidewalks on both sides. And when you look at the aerial, you can see how it comes down and it tapers in and it changes actually pavement colors from one municipality to the other. And so in the Mechanicsburg Borough section, the right-of-way is narrower, not as wide. And on the opposite side is Monroe Township. And going through there on the school side, there is a stormwater swale along there. And that's the reasoning why we did ask for one of the street tree waivers, that we didn't want to put the street trees along Long Meadow, only because when we did, we'd have to put it in that stormwater swale. And that's collecting water from the upper side where President Weber was speaking of, where there is a water problem. It does eventually run downhill and come down past the school, and it runs along the school property and along the pavement between the soccer field in the street right now. We want to maintain that swale. We are going to reorient the soccer field in the 90-degree direction when we put the access in for the buses. But the swale has to remain there. And I think trying to put in a pedestrian way along Long Meadow would be challenging, only because of the stormwater feature and the narrowness of the existing right-of-way that Long Meadow is within the borough at that point.
I like Greg's solution to put it on the south side of the soccer field, some kind of gravel walkway. That would help any pedestrian who wants to get across the school without having to go up to that water issue area. That would be perfect. I think that's a viable solution. That's not very costly if you use a gravel type, stone dust type road or walkway. It's just a thought, and from my perspective. We do have a motion and a second. For the life of me, I can't remember who did it at this point, but do we have any further discussion on that? Hearing none, Mrs. Martin?
Unless I hear a negative response, I will record the vote as unanimous.
Okay, and the motion carries. All right, next item.
Discussion and action on the Phase 2 South Mountain Trolley Greenway Study. Phase 2 contract with Buchard Horn for engineering services, and that is attachment number 9.
Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Mr. Anthony makes a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
And Mrs. Agerton seconds. Is there discussion?
I have some concerns on this, sir.
Yeah, I do too.
I would like to see potentially a agreement between the Mechanicsburg Borough and South Mountain Trolley Association stating what our roles and our responsibilities are on this. due to some meetings that I've had with them in the past, the recent past, the South Mountain Trolley is making some changes to things that I'm not comfortable with, and I don't think was in the original intent of council's resolution of agreement with them. In this situation here, we are the ones that have to contract with Buchard Horn as the engineers. That you'll read through this. We are responsible for them, for the payment of them, and services rendered will be rendered unto us, because the South Mountain Trolley cannot get the grant funding in their name. So we are responsible for the grant. Right now, of the $50,000 DCNR has available, it's a 50-50 match. They only have $17,500 to match that with. That's why this is a not to exceed contract for $30,000. There has been some issues that we've had in the past here with now certain things are being changed, such as maintenance of this trail is going to be turned back over to the municipalities. The original agreement that we had with those by a resolution was that there would be no out-of-pocket expense to the borough at all. And I think council needs to be aware of some of the changes that are coming down the road with some of the things that's going on, particularly with this contract. Not to exceed $30,000 is well within what they have available as far as funding goes. But we also want to have approval on what is being spent. And I think in discussions with Solicitor Cassidy about this, I think we've kind of thought perhaps looking at an agreement defining our roles would be prudent at this time.
Yeah, you hit on my points, Roger. Because I believe I'm the guy that made the motion when we accepted this, that there would be no out-of-pocket expense from the borough whatsoever. Now, I know this is kind of a turnaround kind of deal that they're working here, hoping that they get their grant, and with the existing money they have, they would, I guess, quote unquote, reimburse us for the $30,000 that we're going to spend, but we have no guarantee on that. There's nothing on that document that guarantees that we're going to get our money back.
That is the engineering contract with Buchard Horn. Now, right, for finding some of these properties, we're also going to be probably looking at a contract or some kind of a legal agreement with McNeese. They're actually the solicitors for Legacy Park, so I'm not sure how that's going to work, but McNeese is the one doing their property searches and stuff like that. Now, they did give us the option of having our solicitor do it, but we're still going to end up having to pay our solicitor to do that and then hope we get reimbursed for anything that comes out of there. But with a limit of $35,000 right now that they have to deal with, I have some concerns about, the DCNR released $50,000. That money's out there. And if we don't have control of this and don't have some say over the spending on it, and they spend over $35,000, the borough is on the hook for an unfunded, unbudgeted expense. And we did not budget any money for this project at all based on that fact. So we would be taking money from some other budget line item to pay for this.
Mr. President, I think I'd be remiss if I didn't also inform council that the bulk of this work is not even in the borough. It's in Monroe Township. I can tell you, I'm not speaking for Monroe Township's Board of Supervisors. However, there is strong dissension for this particular project in that particular community. So I think there is a little bit of homework to be done with respect to not only what Roger said, but also some coordination with the township, simply because all this stuff is in there. It's not in the borough.
There's a very small percentage of Silver Spring Township in this, very small percentage of Mechanicsburg Borough in this, a large percentage of Monroe Township. And it's my understanding that you just said that they're not at all even interested in doing this. Now, I think the project itself is pretty cool, but when you think that the majority of it is not even in our borough, and we're going to be footing the bill for the engineering work, doesn't seem quite right to me.
I also tell you, and they referenced the Wirtz property. That's one of our pollutant reduction plan project areas in Monroe Township. So I I am probably going to tell them don't do it because of that particular reason. So I'm just throwing it out there.
The interesting thing is what I've followed in the meetings I've attended with this group. They've had a lot of success in York County with their trail systems and trailways, and they're very, very nice. But it's because the county has funded it and helped them get their grants. You know, the county's not helping with anything on this, but yet the county wants to see something done. Why, I don't know, without giving any money out. So it's
well, the county did issue the $17,500 grant, and that's what they're going to use matching money against the DCNR money. So that's where their limit of 35,000 is. Right. But once they hit that limit, now I've been in contact with the engineer and DCNR representative on both of these situations, so they both know what my concerns are. You know, so, and I know some of the people at Buchard Horn, but there's still that outside driving force, you know, and Tanya and I have spoken on this subject too. So there are some concerns here, but I just want council to be aware that this is not budgeted. And if something does happen and the whole thing goes south, we're on the hook for this.
I'll make a motion to table until we have further clarification on responsibilities as far as cost is concerned.
Okay, a motion to table does not require a second. Is there any other discussion?
Just one, sir. I would request that along with the motion to table this, that perhaps we add to ask Solicitor Cassidy to draft an agreement between us and South Mountain defining our roles and our goals going forward with this project, if we choose to.
Would you be amenable to that, Mr. Miller?
I think it would have to be a second motion.
Okay.
Well, that would have to be, the motion to table can't be amended.
Correct.
Right.
So,
right. Okay, so we'll have to do a separate motion for that. Or can we just, point of order, Mr. Cassidy, can we just appoint you to do that without a motion?
I would prefer to have a motion directing me to take that action.
Okay, we'll do that. So we're gonna vote on the table right now. Mrs. Martin?
Unless I hear a negative response, I will record the vote as unanimous.
Okay, so the motion, as stated in the docket, is now tabled for further discussion later. Now we need someone to entertain a motion to instruct the solicitor to come up with an agreement with South Mountain Trolley on defining the roles of each organization.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second that.
And thank you, Mr. Whitcomb, for the second. Is there any discussion on that?
Question on that.
Sure.
We're going to spend money, which we said we didn't want to do, to put an agreement together on top of an agreement that we already have. Is it really necessary, or can we just follow the agreement that we already have, the resolution that we already have?
It's a good question. Is the resolution satisfactorily cover?
I don't think we have clarity on, like, there was no other correspondence included with that from South Mountain. Did they just send the?
That's what you got. That's what they said.
That's pretty much what they do.
This is exactly the way it is, and then stuff is brought up at meetings, such as the maintenance of the trails. This is the problem we've been fighting on this the whole way through.
I mean, I share Councilman Anthony's concern about the spending more money to save money, but at this, I don't know the best solution for that.
I think
we're actually spending money to protect borough taxpayers' interest, because this agreement would take that interest out of our hands and put it in a volunteer group's hands.
But since we've tabled this, I think we can probably continue on under the original resolution.
Okay.
Mike, Mr. Cassidy, you've had an opportunity to review that, correct?
Not the resolution, Mr. President.
Okay.
I will take a look at that, but I may offer that one option would be to go back to the South Mountain Trolley Association and to let them know that the borough expects them to reimburse the borough for legal expenses associated with developing the agreement. That can be part of the professional services associated with administering this grant on behalf of the association.
There you go. That would cover it then. Very good. So do we need a motion for that? I don't see that we do.
Yes, sir. I appreciate that. If we could have a motion directing me to develop an agreement with South Mountain Trolley Association with defining the roles between the borough and the association with respect to this grant, to include reimbursement from the association for professional services associated with developing that agreement.
Okay.
So am I amending my motion or just making a new
That's
motion?
up to you, ma'am.
So I will go ahead and amend my motion to include the reimbursement is written in there for legal services with the South Mountain Trolley Greenway study.
Okay. And who was the second on that?
Mr. Whitcomb.
I think I was.
Mr. Whitcomb, you still, you're okay, amenable to
Yep,
that?
I'll go with that. I'll go with that.
So now we have a proper motion and a second. Sorry for the confusion, but thanks, John, for bringing that up. I think that clarifies it for us. Any other discussion? Mrs. Martin.
Unless I hear a negative response, I'll record the vote as unanimous.
And the baby is the only one I hear, so it passes.
Good night,
The baby objects.
Good night. All right, going on, Mr. Cesarski.
All right, discussion and action on the expenditures from all funds for the period beginning February 1st, 2021 through February 26th, 2021. And they are listed. Do you want me to read them off or?
We have them.
Okay. As listed below.
Do we hear a motion?
So moved.
I'll make the motion.
Mr. Anthony moves and Mr. Whitcomb seconds. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, the motion carries and the bills are paid. All right, at this point in the meeting is a time for additional citizen comments. Are there any? Hit your raise hand button if you have something to say. Seeing none, is there any other business before we adjourn to executive session by anyone? Hearing none, we will be adjourning to an executive session with possible action. 21, and we are now back in session.
Recording.
Yes, I'm recording. There is no one in the waiting room to readmit to the meeting, sir.
But this will be on tape, so
this is recorded now. Yep.
All right, Mr. Miller, do you want to give the motion, please?
Sure. Motion to approve last chance agreement with RW.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Mr. Whitcomb. Is there any discussion? All right. Since Sarah's not on, I'll just ask if there's any negative response to that you hit your hand button, raise hand button. I see no negative responses, so we will record this vote as unanimous, and the motion carries. All right. Is there anything else for the good of the order?
There is one thing that I'm going to be talking with Councilman Egerton and Tanya Brown and Sue Caniff. We're going to develop a plan for opening the pool this year and going forward with that. We're getting a lot of calls about pool passes and a few other things. So we're going to look at what we can do. I have a contractor now actually on staff, so maybe we can get some of the work done at the pool a little bit cheaper as far as putting up the safety stuff and things like that. So we're gonna work on a plan and see what we can do. The 20% reduction or the 20% capacity number is going to be a tough one to meet, but we're going to see what we can do with it.
Okay.
That's all I have.
Anyone else have anything for the good of the order? Going? Gone. Meeting is adjourned.